Hi, welcome to MBX 9152, your Week 7 introduction. The topic for this week is Frameworks for Digital Strategizing. I'm your course coordinator, David Goad, and I will be going through this brief introduction for the Week 7 materials for you. So the agenda for this week is similar to previous weeks. I'm going to review the content for this week and talk about the key concepts. I'm going to review your to-dos for this week coming up, Week 7 coming up. And also this week, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about the midterm participation marks. You should have all received individual participation marks last week. I think I gave them on Thursday. I have had a few questions from you, from everyone on their marks. I just want to give you guys some general guidance in terms of how you could improve your marks for the rest of the term. So developing effective processes for developing IS and digital strategies. This is one of the key topics in the book. You were supposed to read chapters 3 and chapters 4 this week of the book. So in the book, it talks about this idea that you have business and technical environments. There'll be a set of business requirements. You'll initiate a strategy process. You'll dig into those business needs, and from that, you'll look at your architecture. Then you'll develop some sort of information system strategy. Remembering that IS strategy includes the people, process, and technology. It's not just about the hardware. From that, you would then develop your IT strategy, which is looking at more of the hardware, the infrastructure, the technology that's going to support your information system strategy, which is in turn supporting your business strategy. And then you prepare a migration plan in terms of how you're going to get to where you need to go. You're going to develop some business cases, some cost analysis, and then you're also going to look at various components that you're going to need. Now, the book portrays this process as being relatively linear, going from your business strategy through to your technology strategy. My view is that you do play back and forth. The business strategy certainly influences the technology strategy and your information system strategy, but there also may be components of your information system strategy that may influence your business strategy. For example, if you have a new technology that can create a competitive advantage, that may be folded into the business strategy about how they're going to compete. Some of the things that the book talks about in terms of key things that you need to think about. You want that process to be flexible and modular. You want each process stage should be built on outputs from the previous stage. Everyone should be very well aware of what they're going to need and do. The expected deliverables should be very, very clear. Senior management should know what they're going to get ahead of time, and each of the people providing components of the process and deliverables in the process should know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. You want to have clear checkpoints in the process to make sure that everyone is aligned, to make sure all the deliverables are being produced in a timely fashion. That process may be very, very iterative, or it may take several times going back and forth before everyone is in alignment in terms of the various components of the strategy. It's very important to get all different groups involved in the process. This is not just between senior management and the IT folks. People from all the various divisions, all the various functional areas, all the different levels should be participating in the process so that you can get their inputs. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to action all their inputs, but you should go broad in terms of getting a lot of feedback and input in terms of developing your information system strategy. And then the last thing, the book talks about, I can vouch for this. You want to keep the tools that you use very simple. You want to make it easy for people to use these tools, make sure they understand how to use them, and make it easy for them to make updates. The book says, avoid using complex tools, use simpler tools like PowerPoint, Visio, spreadsheets. I can attest to that. I worked for Microsoft for probably 5 years, and I was heavily involved in their management process and their strategic development. And they had most of their strategy was built off of PowerPoints and spreadsheets that moved up and down. We had standard templates that everyone had to use to make sure that everyone was providing the information that it required, but it was very simple tools that we used in order to communicate all of that. In terms of developing effective processes for developing IS and digital strategies, the book has a really nice table that's very comprehensive in terms of all the tools and techniques that you need to use. So some of the tools and techniques it talks about is, for example, your Porter's 5 forces analysis, where you're looking at all the external forces that may influence the business. Pestle analysis, I'm sure you guys have covered this off one of your other courses as well. Political, economic, social, technological, environmental, legal, these are all the factors, external factors that you need to take into consideration in terms of developing a strategy. We'll talk about in a subsequent slide this idea of the balanced scorecard and critical success factors, so we're covering off that this week. SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. I'm sure you guys have covered that off before. Portfolio analysis we'll talk about in a minute as well in terms of applications. Value chain network analysis is a very common tool to be used. Business process analysis, I'm sure most of you have been involved in that. Business models, we talked about that in previous weeks. Organizational modeling, application portfolio management, we'll talk about that as well on the next subsequent slides, and technology assessment. So this is a very comprehensive list of all the different tools and techniques that you can use to develop your information system / digital strategy. The book talks about, and the readings talk about, this idea of aligning business and digital strategy. One of the common tools to do this is something referred to as the balanced scorecard. The idea here is the organization comes up with a set of metrics across all the different areas that are important to that organization, not just financial metrics, but also metrics around customer service, could be around human resources, could be around internal process business operations, could be around learning. And these are the metrics, and usually there can be 5, 10, 15, 20, say, metrics. And then what happens is the business agrees on what the core metrics are and what the targets are for those metrics. Then what you will have is different versions of that scorecard. So you might have the master scorecard for the overall company, and then various divisions would have a version of that scorecard that's modified for their specific division. The benefits of the balanced scorecard approach is that it is really, really good way of providing for horizontal and vertical alignment. Get everyone within the organization, all the different levels, on the same page in terms of what is important, where are the targets for the organization, and getting all the various divisions and all the various support functions, for example, information services, completely aligned in terms of what they're focusing on. And from an IS strategy perspective, making sure that your digital strategy and your information system strategy is supporting achieving those critical metrics of the balanced scorecard. The only challenge I would say with balanced scorecards is that there does at times, from a business perspective, there can be gaming. So sometimes business managers will do things to try and make the numbers look good, or be very, very focused on the numbers. And sometimes being overly focused on a specific number can lead you to make the wrong business decisions. But balanced scorecards are very good in terms of getting horizontal and vertical alignment. As I said, in all the years that I was working at Microsoft, we used these quite extensively, and that was a critical part of our planning process. The next thing that we talk about in the readings, and that you guys are going to have to cover off this week, is this idea of critical success factors. So the balanced scorecard is what we're going to try to achieve. The critical success factors are the how we're going to achieve it. And the issue here is that these critical success factors need to be directly related back to these business objectives from the balanced scorecard. So the balanced scorecard says these are the key metrics, key things in terms of financial, customer, internal, business, learning, growth, all these different areas. And the critical success factors will say, well, these are things I need to do to achieve financial success or to achieve good customer service, and so on. What that means is that you're going to have this process where the business objectives will then lead to multiple critical success factors. Those critical success factors will then relate it back to the performance management, and then will be used. So you'll say that if I can achieve this critical success factor, does this actually improve this particular number? You will then go through and do some analysis around those critical success factors to see what the issues are going to be, and then you will develop your IS strategy or information system strategy to support those critical success factors. So the example they gave in the book is this idea, for example, that if you wanted to reduce stock costs, you might have some measurements or KPIs that are in your balanced scorecard around, for example, stock turns or write-offs. The critical success factor might be identifying those obsolete items or those items with slow inventory turns early and having better forecasting. And then the information system strategy might say, well, okay, if we're going to have better forecasting to meet that critical success factor of identifying when we have excess inventory, then one of our key components of our information system strategy might be to either improve, have better reporting, or put in better systems to do that forecasting. So you have these three sort of things working together. The business scorecard or the balanced scorecard that says these are key things we're going to focus on. This is what's important to the business. The critical success factors saying what are some of the things that how we're going to achieve those key statistics or critical statistics in the balanced scorecard. And then your information system strategy would then drive off those critical success factors in support of those. Now, one of the other topics that they talk about, there's two other topics they talk about in terms of developing a digital strategy. They talk about this idea of enterprise architecture, and then we'll talk about application portfolio management. So what is enterprise architecture? Well, enterprise architecture is a discipline for proactively and holistically leading enterprise responses to disruptive forces by identifying, analyzing, execution of change towards desired business vision and outcomes. EA delivers value by presenting business and IT leaders with signature-ready recommendations for adjusting policies and projects. EA is used to steer decision-making towards the evolution of the future state architecture of the business. And this is a definition by Gartner. Essentially, most large organizations would have an enterprise architecture group. The enterprise architecture group, which is typically a sub-function of information systems, or the IT organization, is responsible for ensuring that the technical architecture, the information system architecture, will effectively support the business and making recommendations therein. So they tend to be sort of the central plexus, if you will, coordinating all the functions in terms of which applications we're going to use, what's our standards going to be, how those applications are going to communicate together, how are we going to support the digital strategy in terms of the various projects we're going to do, what's the roadmap to achieve the goals and the balanced scorecard that the business has identified, and to achieve those critical success factors that the business has identified, how we're going to get there. So they tend to be the central sort of nexus of information in terms of how everything's going to stitch together in terms of all these complex applications that you would have in a large enterprise business. So the reading you had this week, you had that Retail Co. case study where there was a bunch of learnings in terms of how to use enterprise architecture and how to get the benefits. And some of the learnings were that you need to build your enterprise architecture function relatively early in the organization, so to make sure that it's participating early in the journey and it's influencing the journey, your information systems journey, right from the start. You want to have a strong EA mandate. That means that the enterprise architecture group should be participating in all the sort of key information systems conversations and decisions. They are not the deciders, they are the recommenders or the advisors, but they should be part of those decisions, and the organization should make sure that they are participating in all those conversations. You need to adopt a flexible approach to EA, and the book talks about, or the reading story talks about, this idea of not being a traffic cop. You have to be careful that the EA function doesn't become the group that's always telling the business no, right? The goal for the enterprise architecture group is to figure out how to tell the business yes or give the business what they want. And so it's really important that the enterprise architecture group develops these kind of constructive relationships with the business and with the project teams up front. The reading talks about the idea of actually embedding people from the enterprise architecture group into the project teams, not just having them there that people have to consult to get things approved, but actually having them participate in the process and advising them as they go, so that any kind of approval processes that are part of that EA process are just formalities because they've been consulted all the way along. And you need to adopt a service mindset. As I said, the enterprise architecture group is not there to reduce risk or prevent people from doing what they need to do. The enterprise architecture group there is to support the business to get them where they need to go and to solve problems for them. And you need to really have this services mindset when you're in an EA group. It's absolutely important, because if the group becomes seen as a traffic cop, then it's going to lose value. And as I said, the other topic they talk about, which is really important in terms of developing your information system strategy, is this idea of application portfolio management. So the definition of application portfolio management is where the business attempts to apply sort of the same kind of techniques that you use in financial portfolio management against the applications you have in the business. So essentially what the business does is it sits there and says, okay, you have all these different applications. It might be a CRM system, it might be an ERP system, it might be a supply chain system, it might be an email system. These are all applications that provide value to the business. Let's look at all those applications, look at the benefits they generate, look at the costs associated with them, and then just make decisions based on the cost benefit in terms of all the different applications and where we're going to make our investments. Much like a financial portfolio where you make your investments in certain types of financial instruments like stocks and bonds and real estate, you make investments based on where you think you're going to get the best return. And that's the similarity between the application portfolio management concept and the financial portfolio management concept. Applications typically, and there was this reading this week that you guys had to cover, it talked about application, there's the health, basically assessing the health of your application portfolio, and talked about the idea, of looking at various characteristics of the application portfolio and applications in that. What's the importance of the system to the business unit using it? How much investment is already made in the system? It's been run on a shoestring, or has it been built properly? What's the technical quality of the system? Is it a good quality solution? Is it reliable? Is it secure? Is it scalable? Is it flexible? What's the level of use of the system? Are a lot of people using it, or very few people using it, therefore it's not as important? And what's the perceived management value of the system? We talk about in application portfolio management this idea of cattle versus pets. A pet is something that if it gets sick, you look after it, you nurture it, you spend a lot of time helping along. A cattle is, if a cow gets sick, usually the farmer ends up putting it down, right? So, it's perhaps a bad analogy, but the whole idea is the application absolutely critical to business and something that needs to be nurtured and looked after, or is it something that's less critical that can basically be, thrown out and replaced by something else, right? This is what they talk about, this analogy. And then they present this idea of having, there's a matrix that you can use to basically evaluate your decisions with regards to the various applications, your application portfolio. So you look at the the management value of the application, you look at its technical quality, and based on that, you can come to a decision about what you need to do. So, for example, if the application is very, very critical to the organization, but is low in terms of its technical quality, then you might look to upgrade or replace that solution. If the application is very low in terms of management value and also very low in terms of technical quality, then you have to ask yourself the question, why is it there? And you may want to eliminate that application altogether. If the application is very high in technical quality but very low in terms of management value, then you want to ask the question to the information systems folks, why do they keep investing in this solution and when the management doesn't see any value in it? And you might want to question to the management how you can improve that value of that solution. And then the final quadrant that they talk about is where the solution is very high in terms of technical quality, but it's also very high in terms of management value. And if that's the case, and that's a great outcome. And what you want to do is just continue to nurture that application. So some organizations might have upwards of 50, 100, 150 different applications across the organization. They're providing various functions for the business. The whole idea is that you would take these sort of 5 criteria, you would evaluate those sort of 50 or 100, 150 different applications. You would prioritize them, and based on your prioritization, and then the quadrants, on the right here, the management value versus technical quality, that would give you some indication in terms of where you would want to do further investments to improve your application portfolio. So, where are you going to make your investments to get the best return? Coming back to the concept of comparing portfolio management to financial portfolio management. And so that was a review of the content for this week. So in terms of your to-dos, they are as follows. 1, you obviously got to complete the core readings as every other week. 2, you want to complete your discussion topic, which is on Retail Co's enterprise architecture practices. So there's a discussion topic there. 3, there's your blog post around talking about the balanced scorecard and the critical success factors. So really what we're looking for there is to see that you can apply those kind of concepts and you understand those concepts in terms of their application in business. Then, of course, there's your group projects that you should be working on. The question is, have you got your topic approved yet? I think most of you have come to me asking about your topics, so I think most topics have been approved. And then there was this issue of the midterm participation marks and the general feedback. So as I said in the note that I sent to you, if every week the person did a fairly decent original post and they responded to 2 other people's posts and asked questions and demonstrated they were being interactive, then generally speaking, I gave them a 3.5 or a 4 out of 5 marks. For someone to get a 5 out of 5, really they needed to go above and beyond, and that meant that they were incorporating external references into their posts. They were using charts and graphs. They were using links. They were providing a high degree of synthesis in terms of their discussions. So if they did all that in terms of the original post, and then they were very insightful in terms of their feedback they gave the other students, and they got a 5. People who weren't consistent from week to week, who didn't post every week, who didn't do original posts every week, who didn't respond to other people's posts every week, they didn't get as good a mark. And what I did was I went through every single week and I marked every single person and I assessed their marks, and then I took the overall average, and that was the mark I gave you for your mid-term participation mark. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email. Most of you who have had questions about your marks have sent them through to me, and I've responded to most of them. But that's kind of the process that I use for the first half participation marks, and it's essentially the process I'm intending to use for the second half. Again, just like the guidance it says in the assessment criteria, do your original post, do you respond to other people's posts, answer questions. If you do that, if you have a good original post that's insightful, that maybe uses external comments, that really shows a high level of synthesis, then you're going to you should get a 5 out of 5, or a perfect grader in terms of the overall participation mark. All right, if there's any questions, again, just post to Moodle on the Q&A section or send me an email. I hope you guys have a good week and enjoy the content, and we'll talk to you again next week.